Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emma the Cat Lady, and you join me here with my friend Mo, who is hanging around because we're talking about the Centaurs and Mutant Hounds today. So this is Mo. He's a unique evolved centaur and he hangs out here in this crater. So that's Black Mountain up there. We've just come up from Hidden Valley, which is kind of behind us, and there's this big crater, which is where obviously a bomb hit, and you can see that the whole place is radioactive. There's some skeletons in the bottom, and you can find some dead Brotherhood paladins here as well when you do that quest. So yeah, these centaurs just kind of hang out around here. They like the radiation. So they exist in New California, they exist here in the Mojave, and they exist in the Capital Wasteland as well. So the word centaur is from Greek mythology, and it's a creature that is half human and half horse. I'll find a royalty-free picture to put on the screen so you can see, but I think probably most people would have an idea of what a centaur looks like. So they have basically the body of a horse with the 4 legs and the tail, and then they have the torso of a human with head and arms. So they do have 6 limbs, generally speaking, and it's kind of an interesting choice there, but the full-out centaurs are much creepier looking and much more unpleasant looking. So they are a product of FEV infection, which has caused chimerism. So chimerism is when an organism has cells from more than one genetically distinct individuals. In theory, this can actually include different species. It was achieved in 1984, I discovered, where they combined embryos from a sheep and a goat to create a sheep goat that survived to adulthood, which is kind of impressive but also kind of terrifying when you think about the implications of such things and what could be done. But it is something to note that sheep and goats are pretty closely related species, so they do have an awful lot of things in common. They're both small ruminants, they have a lot of kind of common physiology and anatomy and things like that. You do see it in humans as well, where it's like the thing where you've got fraternal twins that came from 2 separate embryos, and then one absorbed the other, and that causes some of their cells to have one set of genes and some of their cells to have another set of genes, and it's all kind of weird. So it's something that does occasionally happen. So what the master did was he created these centaurs by making some FEV soup, where he threw in a mix of different animals for flavour, and that included humans, dogs, cats, probably other things as well, and created these kind of vaguely humanoid, bizarre looking creatures. And the centaurs fill the role that guard dogs would fill, so they help defend locations and territory for the super mutants, and you'll often encounter them supporting super mutant patrol squads, both in the early classic Fallouts and in Fallout 3 especially, and occasionally in Fallout New Vegas, although there aren't as many kind of groups of super mutants wandering in Fallout New Vegas compared to what you encounter in Fallout 3. And of course when you come here, you find a bunch of them hanging around near Black Mountain, and they do get acknowledged by Tabitha on the radio actually, and she talks about them as her pets, especially Mo here, the unique one. So you do have the similar kind of centaurs that have arisen in the Capital Wasteland, and they've probably been created in much the same way within Vault 87, and you do find them throughout Vault 87 as well as out and about with groups of super mutants or at super mutant encampments. You'll typically find a couple of centaurs hanging around as well. So in the classic Fallout, I'll grab a picture of what they look like in the classic Fallout, but there was 2 different kind of versions. So there was a 2-headed one that had a human head and a dog head, and the bodies took on a kind of insect spider like shape where they've got a torso, and then they've got these legs that are made of arms. So Mo has kind of 2 that he uses, and then 2, just let me get behind you. And he seems to have a couple that trail behind. So in classic Fallout they had 3 pairs of legs that were human arms and hands. The anatomy is pretty wild. I would say this might sound a bit twisted, but I really would want to actually get the chance to dissect one that was obviously deceased, just to see what is actually going on internally there, because there's a lot, and you can see all these kind of bulbous tumory things, and there's hands and arms, and you know, there's so much going on. Even an x-ray, a full body x-ray of one of these things, just to see what internally the anatomy would be like, because they're so weird. They're so weird. But that's the kind of academic in me that is just like, what is actually happening inside there. Be interesting. But the ones, you also have the single-headed ones, which are very much like the ones that we encounter in Fallout 3 and in Fallout New Vegas here. So they have one head and they have two pairs of arm legs. But they also have these tentacle-like tongues, 3 of them, which are just horrifying to think about and to look at. They also have the ability to spit radioactive goop over quite a long distance. The projectile's quite slow, so if you see it coming, you've generally got enough time to get out of the way, but you know, they can actually be quite accurate from quite a long distance away, so something just to be aware of. And you do get the larger, more evolved varieties, which are obviously tougher to fight off. And they do tend to like radioactive areas, so obviously here, you know, we're right at the bomb crater next to Black Mountain, and they're hanging around here, so they're near a major super mutant encampment, but they're all hanging around this radioactive crater because they like the rads. And you can see that here, so, you know, there's another centaur over there. There's usually a few around, but they might have wandered off. But then I say we've got Mo here, who's the unique one. I have turned their AI off, so they're not really doing anything, but yeah, you can see, I don't know if they're supposed to be able to see very well. One assumes that they can, but you know, we've got this human face and then these tongues, and then there's just arms and tumours everywhere. It's wild. So if you do the Brotherhood quests, or if you decide to take a trip up to Black Mountain from the back way, then you'll encounter Mo and his friends and have to deal with them. So you have got a high likelihood of coming across them in most playthroughs. They don't move fast, but because they can attack from a distance, that can make them a wee bit challenging, especially because they do tend to come in groups, and often they're accompanied by a bunch of super mutants as well. They don't drop meat in Fallout 3 or in New Vegas, but they can drop blood in New Vegas, which you can just sell for some reason. I have no idea what value it would be. You can't use it in crafting or anything, but you can sell it for a decent amount. So yeah, there's something there. In Fallout 2, you can actually eat them in Mom's Diner and the Den. Apparently, centaur chops are an option on the menu. But for me, I feel like I'd have to be pretty hungry to want to eat that, but I'm not here to judge other people's dietary choices. That's up to them. So yeah, so that's the centaurs. I say you encounter them in the early Fallouts, you encounter them in this generation of Fallout in both 3 and New Vegas, but I think they were intended to be included in Fallout 4 at one point, and then they were kind of cut from the game in favour of the Mutant Hounds, which fill the same role. So that's why I've lumped them together, because the Mutant Hounds in Fallout 4 fit into the same role as the Centaurs do in the earlier games, so it kind of makes sense to talk about them together. So we're going to head over to Boston just now, and we are going to have a chat about the Mutant Hounds, so I will see you over there just shortly. Okay, welcome back to Sanctuary. So I've just set up a few things here. Obviously, as always, combat AI is turned off and everything, so there shouldn't be any mass panic. Although I forgot I did have a Brahmin trap set up there, but anyway. So yes, we're here to talk about the Mutant Hounds. So they do fill the same role that the Centaurs have, but they are quite different to the Centaurs. So you find them in the Commonwealth here, and also in Far Harbour, because a lot of the super mutants that went over to Far Harbour came from the Commonwealth. Which means that they were more than likely created by the Institute, as were the super mutants in this area. So You know, they're very, very important. Let's make a whole bunch of dangerous mutants and dump them on the surface to kill people research project. So, you know, super helpful and important, that one. But the Mutant Hounds, they are much more distinctly canine in appearance compared to the Centaurs that had bits of humans and who knows what else in them. So we can assume that they do originate from Canis familiaris, which is man's best friend. I can add some cute puppy photos if you like, but we all know what dogs are, I am sure. And if not, then there is, if you've never played Fallout 4 before, there is Very Good Boy waiting for you at Red Rocket Truck Stop, and we do have an example here. So this is one of my doggos that I've acquired in this game, Junkyard Dogs. So fairly kind of, it's a pit bully kind of a looking dog. We've got quite a few scratches and stuff on the ears and around the face, but yeah, so it looks like some kind of pit bull mix type of a dog here that lives at Sanctuary, because this is my original save file that has all sorts of nonsense going on in it. But the Mutant Hounds, so they are originated from the kind of dogs that we know, and obviously if you want to go and collect that good boy dog meat, carry on. So like the super mutants themselves, these dogs have undergone significant changes, very, very similar to the humanoid mutants. So they have a massive increase in muscle mass, and I think especially to know, because when animals are running, quadruped animals are running, most of the power actually comes from the hind limbs. Whereas most of their kind of attacking and biting power comes from kind of the neck and things here. So you can see, look, the size of that neck, you're going to need a really big collar for that. You know, and round the shoulder. So in dogs, that's shoulder blade is kind of in this region, and the shoulder joint itself is about here. Then the elbow, and then this is down to the carpus, or the wrist joint essentially. So you know, you can just see there's so much muscle around the neck and around the shoulders, and a fair bit in the back legs as well, so your quadriceps and your glutes and things. So again, it's something that people don't always kind of grasp because their anatomy is quite different. A hip joint sits in here somewhere, and then this is the thigh down to the knee, and then the hock, as it's known in animals, which is the ankle, and down into the feet and things as well. So I have got a lot of muscle in here, but drastically increased muscle mass around the shoulders and the neck area compared to what you would see in a normal dog. I say the normal dogs in this game do tend to look a wee bit on the skinny side, which makes sense. They're probably not getting fed high quality food on a regular basis. So, you know, it's fair enough for these guys. They also have lost their hair. So you can see their skin is smooth and it's also green. So normal dog skin, it's quite good that this one's here actually. The dogs here do sometimes lose a bit of hair, but dog skin normally is either kind of black, brown or pink, depending on the coat type, the breed coloration and things like that. But the skin usually is one of those colours, whereas these guys, so they've gone green as well, which isn't a big surprise because the humanoid super mutants also turned green, so that's clearly a side effect of the FEV. And the teeth as well, I did want to talk about who's got the best view of the teeth. Yeah, there you go. So the teeth in these dogs, kind of looking closely, as much as their mouths look kind of terrifying, I don't think they actually have more teeth than a normal dog. It's just that the incisors, so dogs have, you know, kind of 3 pairs of incisors, then their canine teeth, then premolars and molars. So what's basically happened is that their incisors have become really big and sharp, as you can see, and then the canines, which are the fangs, as most people would know it, are obviously massive as well, and very sharp, and then, you know, the back teeth. So as far as I can see, they do have the same number of teeth as a normal dog, just that they're big and pointy and sharp, which obviously means that they can do a lot more damage. And, you know, even a normal dog can do a lot of damage. I don't know how well it'll show up on camera. Let me see if I can Yeah, you might be able to see on my hand there's a kind of scar just on this pad on my thumb, and then I'm not being rude here, but I also have, I don't know how well it'll show up on this camera, I have a lot of scarring down this finger, so that was because of a dog bite that I received when I was working as a vet, and that happened, it was over a decade ago now actually, it happened. It was a Bernese mountain dog, so not a small dog of course, and I actually thought my finger was broken because of how swollen it was, and I've been left with this big scar on my thumb, and that's where the dog's canine tooth actually went into the fat pad on my thumb. It was a mess. I had to get antibiotics, washing my hair that night and showering was really challenging because my hand was so sore and swollen. It was not a pleasant experience, that's for sure, but that is the kind of damage that, you know, a fairly straightforward bite from a normal dog could do. You compare that to what these guys could do to you. Yeah, they're a bit intimidating, no doubt. And they, you know, they just have these big pointy teeth, which is obviously all the better to bite you with, Grandma. So, you know, something to keep in mind. And they do travel in packs, generally alongside a group of super mutants, so you know you'll tend to have a few of your super mutants with guns, sometimes with a suicider, and there's often a couple of mutant hounds trotting along beside them as well, so you know they will be there and they are more perceptive, so they'll warn the mutants of an enemy, i.e. you, and they start howling, and according to the wiki, they don't stop howling after death, which I saw in the wiki when I was researching for this video. I haven't put it to the test yet, but I think it'd be interesting to see what might happen, so we'll give it a try. We just turn Combat AI back on. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. So when they're fighting, they're fairly standard, they just charge right at you, but no, can't get them to do the howling. So they just charge at you and bite, which is how most dogs tend to do their fighting, so it's not a huge surprise that that's how they work. Well, you should have helped with the mutant hounds then, Strong. Anyway, right, go away people, too many people talking at me. Right, anyway, so you can tame the mutant hounds in a couple of ways. So Animal Friend works on them. I have to say that's a perk that I haven't really messed with in this game, and there really so much point in it, because it's changed where you have to kind of point your weapon at them to pacify them and all the rest of it. But Animal Friend does apply to the mutant hounds, and also the traps from the Wasteland Workshop, which here's one I built earlier. So got the big Brahmin one over there. I think that one's for cats. Is it for cats? I'm not sure. I think that's the cat one. But this one here is the mutant hound trap. So you need Brahmin meat and stuff, and then you need to hook it up to power. So then you go away and come back, and it'll have got you a mutant hound. And if you've got the thing for pacifying the creatures you capture with the cages, then it'll be friendly and adds defense and stuff to your settlement. And there's, yeah, cats just there for happiness, I think. But yeah, so it is one of the things that you can capture using the Wasteland Workshop cages. And you can also buy one named Gracie from Ericsson, who is the friendly super mutant in Far Harbour. He's the dog trainer super mutant, so he keeps dogs, trains them and sells them, and I love him because that's just adorable. So you can acquire a mutant hound for your settlements that way as well, and they are very kind of useful to collect. So yeah, we can see we've got mutant hound meat there, so let's, oh sure, kiddo, that's fine. So yeah, here we go. So you got mutant hound meat. I think I've got the thing that reduces rads from food, or I've got something that reduces rads from food. It's normally 30 HP and 8 rads. One thing to note though, that while the mutant hounds do drop meat, There's the Wasteland Survival Guide, issue 9, that you find at Sunshine Tidings, which gives you extra meat drops from animals. Doesn't apply to the Mutant Hounds. Apparently it also doesn't apply to mole rats, which I didn't know. But it doesn't apply to the Mutant Hounds either, so you would still only get one. But obviously you need to be a bit careful eating raw meat. That can be dangerous, especially when it's just things that you've killed out in the wild. So you probably want to cook it. And to Mutant Hound chops here, so you can see that the HP gain doubles to 60, but the meat when cooked actually reduces your rad count by 50. That's a flat amount. It takes 50 rads off of you when you eat it. So it is the least efficient item in the game for reducing your radiation count, but if you're in survival mode, it doesn't have the same risks that using Radaway does with your immune system being suppressed and things. So it's an option for keeping that rad count a wee bit on the low side if you're in a lot of places where there's mutants and things. So it's not a terrible option. It's a decent food item, and just chipping away a wee bit of your rads can potentially come in handy for you. So that's the kind of benefit of killing the Mutant Hounds. See, you do even get it when you turn it into goo somehow. But they're hi Hancock, not now. But yeah, so there's two varieties. So there's the Mutant Hound, then the glowing Mutant Hound, which is called that even though it doesn't actually glow. They look basically the same, but they are stronger, so they've got higher HP, higher attack power and things. But I don't know why they're called the glowing hound when they don't glow. But that's what's there. And I do like the concept of both of these creatures, so both the Centaurs and the Mutant Hounds, because they fill a role that dogs have filled for humans. So, the Super Mutants are supposed to be the new version of humanity, the next step in our evolution and all the rest of it. So, it kind of makes sense that the Super Mutants would have a dog-like creature. They would want to have that, because dogs were one of the first things that we ever domesticated. Dogs were domesticated a long time ago from, wolves and wild dogs and things like that. So, that was one of the first things, because they helped with hunting, they helped with defence, they helped protect livestock. Some of them could even be trained to attack in war. There's so many jobs that dogs can do, even in the ancient world, and even more so now in the modern world, with guide dogs for the blind and medical alert dogs and support animals, bomb sniffing dogs, all these jobs and things that dogs could do. That they're an important species to humanity. There's no doubt about that. And so to me it makes sense that the Super Mutants would then find their own version of that as a species that could live alongside them and, take part in things. So the Centaurs are horrible and kind of give me the ick, but they're supposed to look horrible and grotesque. The Mutant Hounds are definitely creepy to look at, but again, quite interesting. They have the look of the kind of Mastiff type thing. Not that different from the sort of Mabari Hounds in the Dragon Age series, actually. That kind of, they've got big heads and thick shoulders, and they're really stocky and they're really strong, which again makes sense for the role that they fill. And it does add some variety to the enemies that we face, and it makes sense from a kind of logical standpoint of this new society of meta-humans that have evolved into the next stage to survive this horrible wasteland. See, thanks for that, Strong. That that helps. So it kind of makes sense that they would then have their own version of the humble dog as a mutant's best friend. So I think that's really interesting, and it's quite fun. So hopefully you find that interesting as well. Now's not the time for philosophical questions, Sean. I really shouldn't have done this. I forget just how many bloody companions and people that are around here that just keep yapping. But yeah, it's interesting. There's the cat, which may or may not be a synth. I'm not sure on that. I'll have to look into, you know, the cat situation in this game, because that's kind of an interesting one. I know it's been referred to as a retcon because we were told all the cats were eaten and things, but then we find cats here. That's for another day. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the rundown of the Centaurs and the Mutant Hounds, and that kind of finishes off the section where we're talking about the FEV and all the products of the FEV and the super mutants and things. So from next week we are going to be talking about something else, and actually we mentioned in Tuesday's video about the stealth boys and how that affected the nightkin when they, not the nightkin, the night stalkers, when they chewed on it. So possibly, you know, getting into some of the technology in the Fallout universe that we don't have would be interesting. The other thought I had was to look at botany, because certainly between Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas especially, you know, there is a lot to do with the plants and things that you can collect that are you know, used for crafting and things like that. I don't think I've got anything. Oh yeah, we've got aster there. So, you know, we have got plants and things that we're using for crafting. It's Preston annoyed because I didn't evacuate the institute before I blew it up, so he could just stay over there and be annoyed about it. But yeah, so looking at the plants and looking at some of the kind of crafting system for these games might be an interesting one as well. So if you have any thoughts either way, let me know in the comments and I'll take that into account when I decide what I want to do next in the Science of Fallout series. Because I really do enjoy making these, and I hope you guys enjoy watching them. Yeah, and I'll see you next time. Bye.